doesn't hear me. There you go. No, this isn't it. Now you can see me. It took about 14 hours to do the scene. The movie's a day in the life of Nervous City. And there's a fire. You can see the painting style, different hands. Yes. So then we went on with all of this excitement of having helpers. We went to Chicago, and where Red was asked to do a show, and the two of us built a portrait of Chicago, Windy City. And it was quite an amazing, fun thing, because we had made this street scene for Fat Feet that was just kind of in a storefront, and we were given a whole gallery to do whatever we wanted. And so a lot of research, and we met other artists there. It was very, very exciting. And this arch in the front was a historical arch. It was completely mechanical and had blues coming out of it. The train was a little mechanical. And, oops. This was the river, the Chicago River with the drawbridges, and gives you a sense of the color. The Chicago piece traveled to Venice, so we were able to go back there again. We were able to not sleep on the street. And when we were in Venice, we met Martin Friedman, who was running the Walker Art Center, and he said, why don't you come to Minneapolis and do something there? So we had, oh man, Highway 61, Bob Dylan, we're gonna go. So we go there, and it turns out Highway 61 was 80 miles away. And so we did a Target discount store, which at the time was completely only in Minneapolis. So because nobody ever heard of it after that, we had to just say discount store. But now it has its glorious title. It's in Los Angeles. Actually, the Chicago piece is in the Art Institute, and the discount store is now in Los Angeles. It was about 35 by 35 feet with 15-foot ceilings, but because of the nature of the installation, it had many incarnations and in its installations. It was mainly wood with some acrylic and painted with acrylics. And we had 4 helpers, and it was done in a few months and shown at the temporary Walker Art Center, Dayton stores, who were our sponsors. So then we thought, well, what could be bigger? When the next job came up, we said, well, we'll have to go to the moon. And this piece was shown in the Guggenheim Museum. It's a 16-foot-high astronaut stuffed with feathers and several helpers, again, collaborators and helpers. And I believe it's in Texas somewhere now. This is a little bit more accurate color-wise. It had the third astronaut in a little capsule going around. Then the Great American Rodeo came up in the mid-'70s, and Red built the entire rodeo, and I got to do the waiting by the bullpen, I called it. They were over 8-foot figures on plexiglass with rear painting in the same style that cell animation is done, and it was a very romantic piece for me to do. I just love those cowboys. And this is the back of the same fence. And the cowboys were very interested because I was drawing and not taking photographs. Actually, that was true at NASA when we studied the astronaut stuff. They said, wow, she's doing that by hand. It was pretty amazing. Then came our largest project, which also did us in as a marriage. It was called Ruckus Manhattan, and it was 24/7 for over a year. It was an incredible portrait of not everything in Manhattan, but a good portion. It was done in a bank space down near Wall Street, which we were given by Creative Time. At that time, it was a new organization. It's now the IMP building, which was beautiful and got to go to a lot of floors. So some of it's sort of self-explanatory. The ferry is now in the Brooklyn Museum. You can walk through it. And on either side, it was like plexiglass, and you could see in kind of low relief different activities on the ferry. And the skyline was there. The fake water was to seem like the river, etc. It was a big project. We had 30 helpers. This is the Statue of Liberty, which was based on a contest, and that beautiful girl came in, and I got to draw her portrait. This is fiberglass and celastic, which I fabricated outside because of the poisons. Now that same spot where I was working is a big skyscraper. Anyway, she's a vinyl pocketbook, which was very popular at the time. And this is the sort of the chef d'oeuvre of the show. It was the World Trade Center, 30 feet high, and in fact, the view of the whole piece, this was taken from the top of the World Trade Center, ours. You could climb up it and look out, and it was outdoors after this installation. And it had lights, it had many moving parts, and it was made by many people over 6 months while all the other works were being made. There was no way of knowing if it would work as a sculpture because it had a quirkiness, it had a narrative, it was interesting, but would it actually work from a plastic point of view? And it did in the end. It's for sale. Anyway, these are the first drawings ever made from the 44th floor. And that's you see the Woolworth Building and so on. I have them. They were then turned into paintings that were in the staircase as you went up. Here's the Woolworth Building and the entrance to the Brooklyn Bridge and the Municipal Building. These were done from photographs but not projected, so it took forever. And there's just a showing off drawing on the street during that time. I like the photograph because of the guy with the cigarette. And there I am, is out of focus, but painting on the Woolworth Building with very short hair. Remember, it was 35 years ago. And this is the Woolworth Building. It's 17 feet high. It's now in the Nagoya City Museum, and it's wood painted with enamels. You could go inside of it. It had the dome with like all the mosaics and portraits of all of us in it. And it had Mr. Woolworth and a flaming dragon that was kind of, his wings were going up and down. That's a better view of it. So you could go through the revolving door and go into this little inside. The door for where we were working in the bank, the exit door for taking everything out was about the size of this door. Everything was assembled with stove bolts. And we were in the Guinness Book of Records as using the most stove bolts that they could go head to tail all the way to the moon. And here's my lifetime dream that you saw the early painting. It was over life-size subway, and you could walk through it. It was very wobbly. It had the station, turnstiles, everything outside. And it was the beginning of Velcro. And we bought so much Velcro that the owner came to find out what we were doing with it. And when he saw we were making a subway, he was pretty surprised. As for the graffiti in the subway, everyone was just painting right over each other. That was also really fun. The figures are plaster painted with gouaches, with Gothic tempera, which is a famous scenic paint that's very concentrated. So they were delivered by cranes when we showed it again. Now I'm jumping to a whole other collaboration, a whole other period, which this collaboration was done with a wonderful poet called Charles Bernstein, who we'll be reading in Washington tonight. And he wrote poems after 9/11 while I was drawing in the street. I live very close to the World Trade Center area, and now called Ground Zero, and so it was barricaded off anyway. It was dark. So the first day, this drawing is from the first day, and I did about 200 drawings because very early on I met the correspondents, and when a policeman tried to chase me away, they said, "Oh, she's with us." So I got to be with the correspondents, and it became almost like a novel drawing there. So I thought I'd read what he wrote. What I can't describe is how beautiful the day is in New York. Clear skies, visibility all the way to the other side of wherever you think you're looking. These are Charles's words, which he was writing on his own, and then we decided to make the book together. It has 50 silk screens. It was published by Granary Books. Today is the next day of the rest of your life. You know, it was an intense experience in Lower Manhattan. It was the kindest period. There was food and clothes and water, sharing, people talking to each other. But at the same time, it was a time of anxiety, and the anxiety brought people together. So this is extremely abbreviated version of the book, but this is Governor Pataki, who was right next to me. Many of the officials on TV say we will come out of all this stronger. The point is that right there, I was standing right next to him drawing. He didn't notice me, of course, but about 4 hours later, he came with all these bodyguards. You know, it turned out it was completely theatrical. So the correspondents were standing on like a milk box so that the fire would be behind their heads. And this is just a typical drawing with the firemen who were all over the place. It's as if the blasts occurred dozens of times, the actual blast being obliterated by the constant replay, meaning he was watching it on TV. But there it was in real life. So I thought I would emphasize the three major collaborators I've worked with Red, with Charles, with Douglas. And the firemen began sleeping everywhere because they'd been working 80 hours straight. And I was in a place where whoever was working was coming out, just go completely exhausted. Now Sunday it's cold for the first time. The summer is over. So that was like 5 days later. He was sleeping in the back of his truck. And then for the book, I was able to do several color pages, and this was an Israeli family, and they were ugly, but were not that ugly. That's Charles's words. But right next to the Israeli family was a Muslim family, and I was really struck by that and made it a focus in the book. And hey, Joe, don't you know, we is they.